It's a pleasure to be here with everybody. It's too bad we can't see you, as Billy just mentioned. But what I'd like to do is just introduce our department, which is Geography and Environmental Studies, and we're breaking our department into two different mini presentations. So I'm going to do Geography and Environmental Studies, and then I'll be followed by Murray Richardson, who will do Geomatics and Physical Geography. So in our department, we have programs in human geography, physical geography, environmental studies, and geomatics. And we'll give you an idea of what that means. I'll just focus today, right now, on human geography and environmental studies. We also offer a number of minors. So this means that you can combine sort of like a sub-specialization with your major degree in geography, environmental studies, or geomatics. So you can mix and match major programs with minor programs, and it kind of allows you to maybe pursue a related interest or a different interest. So for example, if you're in environmental studies, but you're really interested in urban issues and urban environments, then you can do a BA in environmental studies and combine it with a minor in urban studies. So the minors that we have are geography as well, environmental studies, geomatics, as well as the urban studies. And we also have a new concentration in urban geography. So what's geography? Everybody thinks about, that exercise in grade 9 of pinning pins on a map. It's about a lot more than just maps. It's really trying to understand the complexity of human environment interactions and how they influence our everyday lives, communities, and societies. So let me give you an example. How does global climate change affect different communities, cities, and livelihoods? That would be a question that really plays with this interface between human environment interactions. Geography, we also have a unique emphasis on places, place-based analysis, and spatial analysis. So we try to bring the social and the spatial together in looking at different issues like climate change, environmental degradation, water quality, environmental sustainability, territorial conflicts, or urban poverty. Let me give you an example of what this could mean. Like, for example, we've seen in the COVID crisis that public health units have now produced maps which help to identify harder hit communities and groups within cities, allowing public health authorities to respond to those areas in more of an equitable way, instead of treating the whole city as one city, since it is a city that has different social and spatial variations and inequities as part of it. So that's a bit about geography. Our largest program is environmental studies. If you think you're interested in exploring environmental change, governance and policy in Canada or globally, this could be the program for you. And in a minute, I'll be interviewing a second-year environmental studies student, Sondos, an outstanding student, and she'll give you more of an idea of what this program is about. But it's very interdisciplinary. The kind of question that environmental studies students might ask is, how can local food systems contribute to social economies? Economies for people, not for profit. How can it contribute to food security or healthy communities? Again, these are questions that are very relevant to this so-called COVID moment as well. So students in environmental studies can study anthropology, sociology, biology, geography, history, philosophy, and political science. So it's very interdisciplinary in that way. So now I'd just like to bring in and introduce Sondos, who I mentioned earlier is an outstanding second-year student in the environmental studies program, and I'm going to try to follow the class act that Billy just put on in interviewing students and ask a couple of questions, and we'll go from there. So Sondos, thanks a lot.
Of course, I love talking about environmental studies where I can. Get other students excited about it, because I had no clue that environmental studies existed in Carleton up until like 4 months before university actually started.
That's great. Thanks for being here and thanks for participating in this event with us. So I'll just lob you the first question. What drew you to Carleton?
So I actually originally got into Carleton for their neuroscience and mental health program. And then I was just exploring the website and I noticed, like you said, how environmental studies is super interdisciplinary, and the actual like course program, like the program and the courses in it give me so much freedom. Like I can pick any minor that I want, and I have 2 minors, like neuroscience and ASL, and I still have plenty of time to take other geography and environmental studies classes, and it overall just like made me feel like I'd be a more well-rounded person if I took the program.
Great. And what attracted you in particular? Could you talk more about the environmental studies program? Like what really jumped out at you and made you want to enroll in it?
Definitely the social part of geography. I noticed how environmental studies specifically focused on people now and how people are affected in like small communities and bigger communities. Like right now in this moment, like anthropology might look at other places. I'm not super well versed in this topic, but I think the class that stood out the most to me was I think I was reading it, People, Places, and Environments. It was just like the title itself, People, Places, and Environments. You know, you're covering 3 different topics, and it ended up being a super interesting class. Yeah, nothing's really coming to the top of my head right now other than just how well versed all the classes were.
Yeah, so People, Places, and Environments is sort of like the introductory course we use it for environmental studies, but also to human geography. And as I was mentioning before, it really brings together how humans and the environment interact and what are the outcomes and results from that. So you really enjoyed that course. And that's sort of like a first-year course. It's a larger course, like a lot of the first-year courses, but then you can go on to specialize in different areas. Do you have an idea yet about how you're going to specialize?
Well, I'm actually planning on going into med school after this, and I think I specifically picked environmental studies because it helps me understand my place in the environment and consider how other people are in their life, like at what stages, how little things that might not affect me completely might change someone else's life. And I think that would be super relevant to me in medicine, just understanding other people.
That's great. So I assume you'll be taking that course on health and geography in your 3rd year.
Yeah, also that how environmental studies split a little bit into science, you know, takes, you know, health, you know, the social aspect, the physical aspects, like just covers all grounds that you could possibly think of.
That's great. Can you tell us more about another favorite course, maybe one that you're taking this year?
Yeah, Sustainable Futures. That's a class I'm in this semester. It's definitely a favorite. It also makes me look at problems right now, except I feel so like my knowledge just feels immense. Because you learn about the problems, but then you don't feel so helpless about it because you learn about how people are taking steps towards change, and you kind of can see how you fit into how you can like apply yourself to that change. So you're not just learning about all the problems in the world and being like super sad about it, but you actually get to see how people are working towards it.
Some of the solutions.
To
environmental challenges, And of course, how is it going, the online learning? Because I know Carleton's doing a lot to try to facilitate that and, you know, reach out to our students and really stay connected and engaged. So maybe we could just talk about how is the online learning going? Although, of course, we wish that this will be over sooner rather than later.
Of course. For me, my environmental studies, like all my geography and environmental studies professors have been more than understanding about all of us being super stressed online. They've been giving us like extensions, left, right, and center, checking up on us, and definitely listening to student feedback. So that's one thing I really love about our professors too, is that they're kind of like your friends. Obviously, they're people of authority, but it's a lot easier to talk to them because they just feel a little more human. But it's going pretty all right for me personally, just because the professors are so nice, and plus the courses are really interesting. So I'm not like dreading studying or anything like that.
That's good to hear. Really good to hear. Could you also talk about what are some of your favorite moments or experiences that you've had so far in your time at Carleton?
So I'm actually part of QDESA. It's a bit of a mouthful, but Carleton University Geography and Environmental Studies Student Association. Last year we had a few events, and those were pretty fun. But even now, I'm so grateful to, have this group of people to be around, and it just feels like this little community. And that's definitely one of my favorite parts, because even being online, I don't feel so lonely. And they're also all older than me, so I get to be like, hi guys, give me advice on the program.
That's great. And that's part of the social connections, and the importance of social connections, I think, is that it's also support, social support. And what kind of skills do you feel like you're learning doing your environmental studies degree at Carleton?
Definitely critical thinking and my writing. Even though some classes don't necessarily need you to write a lot, it'll require like a paper or two, but definitely improved my writing. I wouldn't say my writing was bad before, but having profs just be like, be more concise, or talk about this problem and you have to research about it a little bit, and you're like, wow, I had no clue this was happening in the world. That's the critical thinking part. You get to see things that you choose not to, I guess, in real life.
And I guess next year you'll be taking a field course.
Yep.
And do you know much about the field course? I wondered if that's always like most students' favorite course, and maybe you could just talk about what you know about that.
I don't know like an immense amount, but I do know a bit from the QDESA people who talk about it a ton. I know one of our VP of Finance, he's doing permafrost. He did permafrost as his his field course, and he got to go, I don't remember where, but he like went and he built igloos and he studied igloos, and it was super interesting. Actually being able to apply your knowledge and not just like sit in a classroom and read about it.
So in the environmental studies, like the geography programs, students can also enroll in co-op. And we also put an emphasis on, as Sondos was saying, applying your knowledge. So in the fourth year of the environmental studies program, you can do a practicum, which means you get a work placement with an organization. It could be a nonprofit organization like Ottawa River Keepers. It can also be a governmental organization like the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, or it can be with the City of Ottawa. So there's different kind of opportunities available, and I guess that's something that a lot of students really talk about in terms of developing their skills, as well as networks and contacts, and applying their knowledge, as Sondos mentioned as well. How do you find campus life at Carleton? I know it's a bit unusual this year because of COVID, but how did you find it in your first year?
I loved the campus. Like, I basically lived on it. I didn't live on res, but I spent so much time in the library, even though I would say I was studying, but I actually wasn't. But you get to like see all the different groups in Carleton just sitting in the library. Our quad is amazing. You just get to sit outside, enjoy the fresh air, walking to class, from class to class. I know everyone talks about this, but the tunnels were absolute lifesavers during the winter. I did not wear a single winter boot when I went to university.
So there's kind of an extensive, for students who are listening, there's an extensive network of tunnels that connect all the buildings on the campus. And so you can walk outside, without going out into winter weather. You can go between classes or between the library and and coffee shops, etc., all through the so-called tunnels. It's kind of like our subterranean Main Street. That's how I think about it anyway. So it's an unusual campus that way, but well suited to the Ottawa winters.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
About the campus, I also love that you could pretty much walk into any building. And like I walked into the architecture building quite a few times and I had no classes or no right to be there. But you just get to explore the campus a little bit and you just like watch other students and they're like basically a zoo for you, being like, wow, architecture. You just get to learn about other programs that way. It's great.
That's cool. It's helpful to get lost, you know, that's what geographers say, although they think that they're, you know, producing maps all the time, so they don't, but actually there's a sort of a joy in wandering around and getting lost, isn't there? What kind of student support services have you used or found really helpful on the Carleton campus?
I used the PASS. In some of the classes that I took in first year, they offered PASS sessions. And they definitely helped. They gave us mock exams, mock questions, and they definitely helped with the actual exams and midterms. And the students who helped with those sessions were super understanding, super easy to talk to. They provided you any information that you could ask them. And then I also used the writing services that we have in our library. They have a ton of services that our library offers, one of them being writing, where someone can basically sit down with you, kind of edit your paper and tell you what you can do better.
That's fantastic. And there's also a librarian who's like the subject specialist in environmental studies and geography and urban studies, Susan Tudin. Have you met her yet?
I think I did in my first year. We went down to the basement and we played a little bit with the maps. Told not to rip them or anything, obviously, but we got to check them out. It was really interesting seeing all the globes and the maps.
Yeah, I've always found that she's really willing and to help students with their different research projects or assignments. I think that's also a great feature of some of the support services that Carleton offers to its students. What advice would you give to a student who's out there listening to us right now and in thinking about their university options?
I would say go with your gut when you're picking your program. I originally went with neuroscience, and like I said, I changed 4 months before the university started. So I basically picked my program last second, but I was thinking about it all year, being like, oh, I'm super interested in environmental studies, but I want to go into med school. And then I researched a little bit and I found that, you know, not a lot of med schools actually need you to take a bachelor's in science. So I would say don't stress too much in your first year. It's your first year. If you mess up a little, that's okay. It's your learning curve. You've got like 3 more years to go. Don't be afraid to ask other people for help or talk to your profs. They're not, scary people. Clearly, Jill's super sweet, and all the profs that I've met have been nothing but nice and understanding.
Okay, I'm going to spring some 2 final questions on you, but it's more like a word. Okay, great. It's more like a word association game. Okay.
All right, let's do this.
Okay. So I'm going to say a couple of words, and then you say 3 words that come to mind.
Okay, this is going to be interesting.
All right. Your experience at Carleton University.
Great, fun, and exciting.
That's good. Okay.
All positives.
And now I'm going to be a little more specific and go into your program. So if I say your experience in environmental studies, what 3 words come to mind?
A little depressing.
Because of the nature of the issues and the challenges at hand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Fun though. That's a little offhand, but and educational.
Okay, that's great. Anything else you want to add or say or think that students out there listening should know?
Get involved. I think the other 2, Emma and Janie, talked about this. Get involved when you do join university, but don't overwhelm yourself too much with being like, oh my God, there's so many clubs. You'll see that Carleton has like 300 clubs. But don't overwhelm yourself with joining them. Be excited to meet new students. Don't be afraid to talk to them. I know that we're all online and it's a little scary, but I know that some programs have been making like Discords or doing online meeting chats. Don't be afraid to go to those, even if you're an oncoming student. And also, just a side note, there's a Carleton Reddit that actually exists, and you can usually ask students who've been there for years about the program that you want to go into. So if you don't want to, email a professor or something, you can just usually post being like, I'm going into this program. Anyone have any advice? And usually you'll get a few responses.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sandoz, for your participating in this, and it's been a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.